let's talk about that first of all. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins us today. So if you normally tune in, he's on a Thursday. It is Tuesday. You haven't missed a couple of days, had a long sleep. But I mean, a lot of people were hoping that would be delayed and wouldn't happen. But there's a lot of talk that it was going to have to happen because, I mean, the Tory government sold them the site and they always said it was for an embassy. First mistake, insane. Yep. This has been delayed. The Tower Hamlets Local East End Council, they had refused to accept the planning applications. We've had loads of revelations about all these redacted planning forms. Not just redacted for us, as in we can't see them. No, the people making the decisions can't see them. And we discovered this was right next to, within a metre, one of the walls of the Chinese embassy would be within a metre of some of the most vital communications and security cables in and out of the city of London. Absolutely vital. Secret rooms, numerous secret rooms in the basement. Plans obviously for supercomputers, judging by the aircon units they were suggested they would have. We thought that he might be talked out of it, but there's this idea that actually they've got to build this embassy now and give approval to it, and the government has overruled local planning decision, because otherwise we won't get this trip for Keir Starmer to go to China later this month and get some sort of pathetic trade deal where China dumps all their cheap EVs and solar panels on us. Philip Ingram, this is a disaster for British security.
Yeah, very much so. And you can see the government, earlier on the week, the government rolled out a former senior head of the intelligence agencies, security agencies, to turn around and say, "Oh no, this would make it better." But when you read the detail, it would make it better if China then closed down all of the other little buildings that they've got throughout London and concentrated everything in one place.
And this would be their biggest embassy by far in Europe. It's a super mega embassy.
It's a mega embassy.
A spy hub.
It's a mega embassy in the central location where it can gather the intelligence that is China's #1 priority, and its #1 priority is anything that will give it an economic advantage. And the City of London is one of the premier financial hubs in the globe. So much
and
goes,
our economy is absolutely reliant on it. It's Correct. Not just the taxes they pay. No. This is okay. So what is it? What is the threat that China could do? Are we going to stop this? Little men in their boiler suits. They're going to be digging through the wall, and they're just going to be they're going to cut those cables, or they're going to be reading those cables.
No, they can read. They'll be able to read the cables. They'll be able to get in without us noticing. And getting
access to those even by a nanosecond before they reach the city, that could affect trading prices.
Oh, very much so. People
could make billions.
They'll get in a way that we will not know that they are tapping into everything. So they're going to get.
Why aren't those cables secure if they're so?
Well, they are secure, but we're dealing with nation states and the level of technology that can come in. And remember, the cables were laid a couple of years ago, so there's ways of monitoring them, but it's a battle between how you monitor. And I'm not going to go into any real detail here.
Thank you.
And how you can access it. It's something that's been going on for decades.
And what will they be able to do with that knowledge, with that communication?
Effectively insider trading, but global corporate, countrywide insider trading. So all the sensitive deals that are going on across the City of London, where someone is buying a big corporation, a share price is going to change, an ownership is going to change.
And they'll make money out of that, or they'll get power.
The Chinese will make trillions out of it, and they will have power as well. But because what they'll then be able to do is look at where there are deals that are coming in, see whether a Chinese company can come in and outbid or bid in a different way, see what the criteria are, and get in to do that.
So
but there's more than that as well, because China is paranoid about security around it. So everyone that lives within different radii of the embassy are going to have everything that they have in their own apartments, their own houses, and all the rest of it listened into by the Chinese
on locals.
all the time.
We know that's what they do.
All the time.
And there are people who actually live on the site as well. Again, why did the British government ever sell them this site? I mean, the Americans, who are, depending on who's in power, our greatest allies, security-wise, part of the Five Eyes and all of that, they have got a huge, big embassy. I had a lovely tour of it with the then US ambassador a number of years ago, on the other side of the river. They used to be right in the centre of town near Oxford Street. They've moved somewhere. They can have a big site. Surely that's what the Chinese should have been told they should do as well. So why was that site sold when they said it was going to be an embassy? Why have MI5 and MI6 apparently said they're okay with it?
Well, there's been a level of political control over what MI5 and MI6 will say in a public.
So they don't really think it.
So we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Why was it sold? Our diplomatic, and this is where I'm going to come out slightly on the government side. We've got a balance between security and diplomacy, and our governments are focused on short-term diplomacy to make a quick buck during the time that they're in power. They're not focused on the longer-term threat that's there, and that's why the Tory party will have agreed this. Because if we look at our relationship with China over the last 10, 15 years, it's changed. China was our great big friend. There wasn't a problem. We were doing more deals. This was David Cameron.
I always disagreed with that.
Well, exactly. So did anyone with a degree of logic and looking at geopolitics. But he was interested in what he could do in his parliamentary term. And this is where Keir Starmer is making this decision today. He's just off to China. He wants to open doors so that it's going to bring some more
it's going to splat him back in the face.
It will do. But economic advantage to the UK is what he's hoping for, so that the hole he's dug himself, he can try and suggest he's getting out of.
It is extraordinary. Keir Starmer, I know you're probably quite busy. You're probably packing for Davos right now because you realise you should go. A little message to you, Keir Starmer. Whether it's the Chagos Islands and giving them away to a country that has no right to them whatsoever, and paying them for the privilege of renting back, leasing back a crucial military base that we already own, that is, as the President of the United States quite rightly pointed out, great stupidity. It's also great recklessness as well on behalf of our defence and our security of our country and indeed of the Western world, because we know Mauritius is basically in cahoots with China. And then you think it's a great idea to approve a mega Chinese embassy in the heart of London, close to the city, close to these communication and banking networks, where they of course will make huge benefits, as Philip's just been explaining, but will also just put us and our government and our city at great risk. You do that again, and all for a little bit of a benefit, because you're going to go to China and you want to have a trade deal. You know what that trade deal is going to consist of? China selling a whole lot of goods to us: electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, you name it. They're going to sell a whole lot to us at cheap prices. Oh great, why? Because they're built by slave labour using coal-fired plants to create the energy, while we suck up this mad net zero policy. There is not a single policy on which you do not get it wrong. And there is not one. You give away what we own, you pay for the privilege of doing it, you buy stuff from China, which is a hostile nation state, to boost their economy, and you deliberately damage ours under net zero. You give away strategic bases, you give away crucial land at the heart of London to our enemy, and meanwhile you talk the talk but you don't walk the walk when it comes to our defence spending and our proper security. 2.3% of GDP is not enough for us to be spending on defence. You talk about 3% of GDP sometime whenever, when, by the way, judging by your latest poll ratings, mate, you ain't going to be in power. You are not a serious man at a very, very serious time. It's not that you're not doing anything to make us safer. Every act that you carry out as Prime Minister of this country, you make us less safe and less secure. You are a clear and present danger to the security and defence of this nation state, and you need to stop doing that, because you are putting us at risk.
What she said.
Was there any word of that, Philip, that wasn't true?
No, 100%.
This is terrifying stuff.
This is absolutely terrifying. It's short-termism. He's not interested in this country. He's interested in trying to save his own bacon by getting one or two little headlines.
No wonder the man is at 75% disapproval ratings, for goodness sake. It's absolutely... Let's go on to Chagos. I mean, where do we even start with this guy? Donald Trump, in a post overnight, I won't read the whole thing over, but he basically has accused Keir Starmer of giving away the Chagos Islands. He says it's for no reason whatsoever, in an act of great stupidity. Now, clearly, Donald Trump has just found out about this, because the White House has approved this before, as has the State Department. I think we were all a bit surprised by that. We were rather hoping, were we not, that the White House was going to veto it.
Well, Keir Starmer said that the White House had approved it.
No, there've been statements. No, there've definitely been statements, saying they had no issue with this. Is this a veto? Will it stop it from happening?
Well, it should be a veto, but I think Keir Starmer is blind and deaf, and therefore he's probably going to ignore it. And that's the difficulty. He needs to start to read the tea leaves.
Can he afford to ignore it? Because this is a crucial US air base. This is about our allies working together. This is used by the Americans.
Well, so far he's ignored every other warning sign that's come out from Donald Trump on everything, and he's trying to play this silly game. And the Chinese embassy is the classic one, because Donald Trump a few days ago came out and said that was a silly move. So he doesn't
He's right
listen.
about some stuff. He really is, isn't he? I mean, it's very interesting, the reaction on the Chagos issue. Nigel Farage has said, thank goodness Donald Trump has vetoed the surrender of the Chagos Islands. The Americans have woken up to the fact they were lied to. They were told the UK had no choice but to surrender the Chagos Islands. This was simply not true. And now they're angry with us. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has said paying to surrender the Chagos Islands is not just an act of stupidity, but of complete self-sabotage. Look, it has been very, very clear, and we had a caller, Pav, earlier, he absolutely knew stuff, certainly more than government ministers on the round today, that the International Court of Justice ruling and the latest tribunal ruling, they're not legally binding. Everyone talks about these courts and things, you know, and again, the people have completely and utterly lied about what, for instance, various rulings on Israel have been over Gaza and the like. I mean, people literally make this stuff up, but people forget a lot of these rulings. And again, even if the UN decides something, you've got Russia and China pulling strings. You've got a load of, frankly, corrupt, kleptocratic, third world countries putting their little judges, you wouldn't recognise as a judge in this country, on these panels. This is about power plays. This is about, economic and strategic and defence advantages. It's got nothing to do with rights and wrongs. And I'm sorry, I've said a million times, over Maduro, Venezuela, this idea of this international rule of law is a little bit of nonsense, because it's actually the rule of might, and it always has been. We've been kidding ourselves. We have absolutely no requirement whatsoever to hand over the Chagos Islands to anyone, let alone Mauritius, who have never owned them in their lives. And when Mauritius is in absolutely hand in glove with China, because China is part of their Belt and Road policy, and it's basically been going around the world, particularly in Africa, they basically said, would you like some investment? Would you like some? Should we build you a new sewage plant? Should we help you out? Should we help out your government, your kleptocratic, corrupt, useless government? Not saying that government is, but an awful lot of governments are. And then they get the investment, and then they start pulling the strings. And they're getting out all the minerals, all the ores. I mean, we have been asleep at the wheel.
The specific legal ruling had a clause in it that excluded the UK. It's non-binding, but it also had a clause in that excluded, set the conditions to exclude the UK's ownership of the Chagos Islands. So there was nothing in there. Yep. And we have to remember the Chinese aren't thinking in parliamentary terms. They're thinking 20, 25 years out. Yep. And therefore they're manoeuvring everything to do that. Whereas our government is only thinking in what's tomorrow morning's headline.
Can there be a court challenge over the Chagos Island decision? It hasn't gone through Parliament yet. The Lords, there are lots of disappointment. We spoke to Andrew Rossendale, was Tory, now Reform MP. His disappointment that the Tories in the Lords didn't push hard enough to basically talk that bill out. Because again, you don't want unelected peers deciding what MPs do, but there's no manifesto commitment to this. Yeah. Basically, all of the controversial things that the Labour Party has tried to do, weren't in the manifesto. They're plucked out of thin air. And therefore there's no requirement on the Lords to sort of let it through. Can there be a challenge on that? Can there also? I mean, as one of the government ministers has been saying in the last few moments that the Chinese embassy say will go through as well, but unless there's a court challenge, could there be? And there's talk of a court challenge by local people for a start.
On the Chinese embassy, there can be a number of court challenges and judicial reviews and everything else. So it's not something that's going to happen quickly.
Can we delay that until, say, Reform or the Tories are back in power?
Yes, almost certainly. And again, I hope there can be court challenges and certainly more challenges in Parliament over the Chagos bill, because there's only about 12 weeks more of parliamentary time for debates to go through, and there's an awful lot of stuff that Keir Starmer's done his U-turns on or hasn't presented into Parliament that he has to try and get through, and with any luck we could get out of parliamentary time to do this, and that would be a good way out for Keir Starmer without him being accused of a U-turn, because it's parliamentary procedure.
God forbid, because that would be damaging for him.
And an even better way out for us, because we wouldn't lose something else that's vital.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Greenland. Donald Trump has made it very clear he wants Greenland. Starmer yesterday basically urged the EU not to hit back at Donald Trump over Greenland. Stay calm, everybody. The EU have been talking about this sort of trade bazooka. Basically hitting some of those tech companies that he loves so much. We're all at the front row at his exactly a year ago when he took office at his inauguration. Keir Starmer he's slightly out of step with the EU. He's also out of step with all the world leaders who are turning up to Davos, which is
and everyone in this country.
Trump, exactly. But it's fascinating. Only a few years ago, do you prefer Westminster or Davos? In a quick-fire question in an interview, he said, "Oh, Davos," and he said it very. I've never seen him more passionate about anything. His wife would love him to be as passionate about her as he is about Davos. But again, this is the thing. He's always gallivanting around the world. There's a load of pushback on that one year here, dealing with our problems here. So he decides not to go to Davos. The 1 year that everyone's going to be there.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
Donald Trump has published a couple of pictures, it's very busy. He was a bit bored on that flight. Someone has got to get this man a Netflix account and just give him a nice long series with a load of episodes. Like, those ones are like 8 series, 20 episodes ago, to keep him busy on long flights. Because not only did he post a message from President Macron, a private message, my friend, it begins, talking about having dinner in Paris, but basically saying, I do not understand what you're doing on Greenland. Let's try to build great things. Talking of a G7 meeting in Paris on Thursday, hastily convened. May well happen, who knows? But he also put out 2 pictures. One of them is a photograph. It's again AI, and it's got Donald Trump with a big US flag behind him. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, and the J.D. Vance, the Vice President, putting it into Greenland. Greenland, US territory established 2026, it says. Another one is Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office at the White House with all those NATO leaders who came to talk to him about Ukraine. And next to him is a big map of the northern, the North America, showing not just the US with an American flag, but the whole of Canada and Iceland as well. He is going hard. He's saying he's 100% committed to these tariffs. What do you think is going to be the end of this?
Well, I hope the end of this is going to be Europe, and I'll include Canada as part of Europe. So the
part of NATO.
The non-US nations of NATO coming together and stepping up an awful lot more in the wider defence priorities and making sure that the United States is not needed for the defence of the North Atlantic area.
Well, the thing is, we can't just go buy a whole load of military equipment, off the shelf. We can't pop to Tesco and get it.
But we can make it a lot, and actually the Poles are popping to Tesco and get it. Well, South Korea and are buying it from there because there's a lot they are getting off the shelf. So there's an awful lot more that we can do on that to convince the United States. If Donald Trump goes through an economic war, then Macron wants to carry out, go for this bazooka approach. The United Kingdom owns the second greatest amount of US debt, with $888 billion worth. We're second behind Japan. Japan owns the biggest amount of US debt. So if that started to get sold off,
we're not going to start an economic war with America.
We're not.
We're just not.
We're not. It would be the worst thing that we could ever do because it would see a complete change in world order, and Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin would be the 2 people that would be laughing all the way to global power.
Every single story today, whether it's again, one of the biggest fears from the EU is we can't go too hard on this Greenland issue because we've got this worry about Ukraine, and if America pulls out and goes, you know what? Not having anything to do with it, we're not selling you weapons anymore, which would be a silly thing to do, actually, because they're American companies making a lot of money, a lot of jobs resting on those arms sales to EU to hand over to Ukraine, paid for by
America's making a lot of money
Europe.
out of Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. But again, Donald Trump doesn't necessarily always do things. I'm not sure he understands a lot of the economics on these things. Does this whole thing just come down to the fact that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize? He's got the Venezuelan opposition leader's Peace Prize, but he hasn't got the one that he thinks he wanted. We've seen a leak of a letter to the Norwegian Prime Minister basically blaming the government for not giving him the Peace Prize. I'm of the view that he should have got the Nobel Peace Prize, although what had happened in Gaza hadn't happened by the time these polls, the nominations were closed. But Obama got nominated within the first 6 weeks of his presidency, and he'd done sod all.
Yeah, but Obama shouldn't have got it.
We know that. Even Obama admitted that.
But therefore, you don't then say because Obama got it, Trump should get it. Trump promised.
Except he did bring about peace in Gaza.
Well, no, he hasn't brought about peace in Gaza. He's brought about a cessation of the fighting that's going on at the minute. But at the minute, we still have Hamas as a terror organisation that's armed. They are still terrorising their own people. There's still no settlement between. And they haven't completed all the conditions of the first phase. There's still a body to be returned, and they haven't returned that yet to the Israelis.
We're in a better place than we were before that.
We're in a slightly better place.
We're in a much better. The Israelis are in a much better place.
It could fall apart tomorrow without any problems whatsoever, and therefore there isn't
that's because the West doesn't properly back Israel in fighting these terrorist organisations.
and the same with Iran and everything that's going on there. And the Middle East is a tinderbox that could blow up even more than just what was going on in Gaza and southern Lebanon.
But what did Donald Trump saying in this message? In interviews. There have been so many messages, so many interviews, so many comments on his plane on Air Force One on the way over to Davos. He's speaking tomorrow there. He said he's 100% committed to these tariffs on the UK and 7 other NATO allies. But he says also he no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. He's always said he's the peace president. These are, Ukraine and things like that. These are Biden's wars. They're not my wars. They're not my problem. Now he's saying he no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. Sorry. That is terrifying.
But he's now carried out a military operation to arrest, albeit I think it was justified.
I think it was justified. An undemocratic leader.
Venezuela, but he did go into another country and take the
I don't have a problem with regime change in Iran or North Korea or undemocratic, totalitarian, authoritarian leaders who are narco criminals who've been indicted by the American courts. I've got no issue with that at all. It's not the same as Greenland, which is a democratic state and an ally.
But you're thinking of it from your perspective. You're not thinking of it from Donald Trump's perspective. So Donald Trump thinks it's all the same.
But he's thinking of it, let's face it, as from a Doddler's perspective, because we all know perfectly well he can protect Greenland and those routes, I get that America's strategic interests stretch to Greenland. He has the right since 1941 to have as many military bases and troops there as he wants.
The 1951 agreement.
There was 41 he was allowed to build bases during the war.
Yes, but there was a specific 1951 agreement that brought together, looking at the Cold War and the threat from Russia, the US's ability to put whatever military capability it needed on Greenland, around Greenland. So there isn't a security issue there. Donald Trump could put the whole of the US military into Greenland tomorrow, and the agreement is already in place with the Danish government and the people of Greenland to do that.
Now, I think a lot of people would go, why are you talking about international affairs? Why don't we talk about the economy's in decline? There are fewer job vacancies, fewer people in work. I just talked to someone only this morning talking about unable to get a doctor's appointment. Someone I know needs an operation, being told it's 9 months before you're even allowed to get on the list. I mean, they fiddle these lists. People are, we talk about crime. There's so many other things going on in this country, and yet so much focus, not just by the media, by the government, by others, is on international affairs. But they all tie in, don't they?
They do all tie in, but the other thing is what they do is the international affairs being handled so badly take political time away from our ministers. They take the bandwidth away, where they're then not using that to focus on what's going on in this country, and therefore it gets worse in this country.
Is that Keir Starmer's fault? I mean, I think, as I've just said, I think Keir Starmer is a threat to this country's security. I think he hasn't got a clue. But there is an element where all these countries in Europe, so everyone around the world is currently dealing with the complete and utter impetuous, impossible to predict actions of Donald Trump. I mean, I don't believe for a moment Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is going, go for it, mate. He's absolutely horrified as well, is my guess.
And again, this is where Starmer's naively not going to Davos whenever in the World Economic Forum that's there. The latest economic figures or predictions that are coming out of the UK is that we are not going to grow by even the very small percentage that the government had said they were going to grow over 2026.
Exactly.
He needs to be there and start moving and shaking and getting us into a position to remain the sixth largest economy
the
in
US
the world.
tariffs ain't gonna work, are they?
No.
Wow, so much to talk about. 11:28 is the time. I want to hear from you. You can talk to us about the Chagos Islands, the great stupidity, Donald Trump and Greenland, the Chinese embassy just being approved in the last 20 minutes or so, right close to the Tower of London and to the city, these crucial cables. The economy, you want to talk about it, you can give us a call.